Max,
Yeah.
let me introduce you to somebody.
Okay.
So I'm holding up the 2016 summer edition of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And on the cover, you'll see the nation's leading passer,
That is Patrick Mahomes.
Pat Mahomes,
Yeah.
and his coach.
Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah. I'm familiar with them both.
We met Coach Kingsbury last year when we were
Yes.
doing this photo shoot. Nice guy, liked him a lot. It's easy to understand why people like Cliff Kingsbury. Easy to understand. There is now this notion going around the internets and the commentariat, if you will, the people who talk about sports as opposed to actually do them, like us.
Yes.
That Cliff Kingsbury, the Texas Tech head football coach, is on the hot seat. Is that Texas Tech fans? I know that some Texas Tech fans I've talked to are growing weary of Coach Kingsbury.
Okay.
Specifically because, look, and it's in a lot of ways, it's easy to see why. Okay, last year you go 5-7. And more importantly, you go 5-7 in what is roundly considered to be a down year in the Big 12.
Sure.
Okay, that if you're looking at what they did last year, it was not great. The loss to Arizona State on the road. Okay, giving up 68 points is not great, but okay, fine. Yeah, there's that. The losing at Kansas State, you can probably excuse.
Yes.
Losing to West Virginia and Oklahoma, that's fine. But losing to Texas is not good. And the real thing that I think really whipped up this is Cliff Kingsbury on the hot seat thing is the loss to Iowa State. 66-10 to Iowa State. You're an Iowa State fan. You will say loudly and proudly that there is no excuse to ever get beat 66-10 by Iowa State.
No.
Even if you are an FCS team. I mean, that is one of the most dreadful performances we've seen from a Texas team in a long time.
Inexcusable for a Texas FBS program.
It's really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
And so there is this notion of, okay, is Cliff Kingsbury on the hot seat? Now, it's worth remembering that he signed back in 2014, before the 2014 season kicked off, right before it kicked off. He signed after what was easily his best of his 4 years at Texas Tech. They went 8-4 in that year, or 8-5 rather. They signed him to an extension through 2020. Now, as we know, college football coaching contracts mean almost nothing, at least as far as length is concerned.
Right, absolutely.
Because nobody really, let's put it this way. If his contract were up in 2018, if it got to that point, they wouldn't just be like, well, we're just not going to re-sign you. Right. That doesn't happen. Right. It's not like in it's really actually coaching contracts. I can't think of a single place where it's like, oh, well, your contract's up and we're just not going to re-sign you. Like, you either fire them beforehand,
right,
or you...
There's only one part of a college football coach's contract that matters.
It's a salary.
Yeah.
It's a salary.
Buyout.
Actually,
well, the buyout.
There you go. I was going to say there's two things. One,
they're linked,
is a salary, and two is the buyout. And so I want to talk about that because for me, I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is on the hot seat. Now, that's not to do with performance, because his performance, let's say they go 5-7 again this year. I mean, right now he sits at 24-26 in 4 seasons. He's coached 50 games for the Red Raiders. He has won 24 of them. He has lost 26 of them.
Right.
That is not good. That's not going to cut it. No. You need to be at Texas Tech. You need to be making a bowl game every year. Right. I firmly believe that. You need to be making a bowl game every year. 24-26. And more importantly is that if you look at the statistical, from a statistical standpoint, they are trending down. Mm-hmm. Okay, in the most important thing, the thing that always defines Texas Tech football, which is how the defense plays. In his first year at Texas Tech, they ranked 85th in the nation. Not good in total defense. Not good, but manageable. You can manage if you have the flamethrower offense that they usually have, because they usually rank in the top 10 offensively, and you ranked 85th in the nation defense. Yep. Not ideal, but you can handle it. That'll get you to a bowl game.
Yep.
Okay. The next year, 2014, they slip all the way to 125th, and you go, wow, it just cannot get worse than that. It cannot get worse than them ranking 125th in the nation in total defense, like they did in 2014.
But wait.
In 2015, they ranked 127th in the nation, and you go, it cannot get any worse. It simply cannot get any worse than ranking 125th or 127th in the nation.
We thought
in total
for
defense.
sure they'll improve to some amount. Like they're maybe 20 spots, but that's still improvement.
And in 2016, they rank 128th in total defense. Dead last.
Yeah.
Dead last.
Yeah, not good.
And so, from a performance perspective, there is reason, I think, to say if there's not improvement in 2017, you're going to run them out of the paint. Here is the problem. The problem is that when Tech signed him to that big contract extension after the 2013 season, he was smart enough to get a pretty substantial buyout in there. If they were to fire him right now, if Tech were to fire him right now, they would owe him $9.4 million.
It's pretty steep for a school like
to
Tech.
sit on his butt.
Yep.
If they were to fire him after next year, $6.7 million.
Still not great.
It is not until after the 2018 season, and even then, you're paying him $4 million to not coach you.
Right.
I just don't see there. Now look, obviously things can go crazy. We saw with Dan McCarney at North Texas that if you lose to Portland State at home by 70 points, then all bets are off.
Yep.
Okay? Then all bets are off. But I just don't see how Tech is going to fire Kliff Kingsbury if he doesn't if he does the same thing as he did last year, 5-7. Let's say they go 5-7 again this year. I just don't think that they are going to fire him because that's too much money to spend on a guy who won't be coaching you.
And it's like you and I have talked about this on the show before. There's a philosophical sort of dilemma there, right? Like you have a coach who consistently produces one of the best offenses in the country. Mm-hmm. He also consistently produces one of the worst defenses in the country. Mm-hmm. How do you weigh that? How do you weigh that up? It's not like it's that easy to be this good at offense, particularly with the rotating cast of characters they've had. Now, Mahomes obviously is the exception, but they were still very good offensively before him. If they continue to be great offensively, but they don't improve on defense, what is the solution? Really getting rid of Kliff, or is it maybe, hey, we really need to have a talk about this? How you run the defensive side of the ball? If they go 5-7 next year, but it's still a top 10 offense, even without Mahomes. Yeah. I still don't think you fire him. I think you have to just sit down and be like, look, everything else is working, but we have to figure out a different way to approach defense. Mm-hmm. Like, we have to just throw everything out. We've got to figure out a different way to do this.
Yes.
You know, maybe it's not down to the coordinator. Maybe it's something else, but there needs to be. I mean, I'm sure they're having these conversations now, but I just don't see. It's so hard for me to jibe the idea of we have one of the best offensive minds in the world. We're going to run him out because we can't figure out the defense. There's got to be a compromise there.
I agree with that. And the other thing to remember, in my view, is that this is still a guy who is young and who is still, I think, and this is not a knock on him, he's still figuring out the head coaching thing. You talk to his players, the players like him.
Yeah.
Okay? You know, the bottom line is, though, he does need to improve that defense. They have to find a way to do that. But all that said, I just don't see any scenario where Kliff Kingsbury, any reasonable scenario. Obviously, there's the Portland State thing. Right. But if he gets Portland stated, all bets are off. But I'd like to turn that into a verb, by the way. Portland stated. If he gets Portland stated, he's gone. Then all bets are off. But right now, based on the way his contract is set up, I just do not see a situation where he is not the head coach for Texas Tech, both in 2017 and in 2018. 2018, maybe things change, and $4 million is manageable. But for me, the way this contract is set up, I just don't see how you could say Kliff Kingsbury's on the hot seat to lose his job. Will the fans hem and haw? Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And they have every right to hem and haw if they go 5-7 again. But
I think the other factor in this, too, beyond the Portland State caveat, is Kirby Hocutt. If Kirby Hocutt stays, I think this all stays. But if suddenly they changed athletic directors for some reason, then we'd probably have to have a different conversation.
And we've seen that at times, that new athletic directors come in and want to change things around. But for now, I would say that Kliff Kingsbury is relatively safe.
I would think so, too.
Thanks to his contract.
I understand the fans' unrest. I understand why they're frustrated, but I also think weighing the whole situation, looking at what's out there, I still think he's the best guy for the job.